The Dr. Taz Show, the podcast. Dr. Taz, Superwoman Wellness. Here's Dr. Taz.
Welcome back to the show. Every episode of the show, I'm trying to help you guys build your own personal prescription for power. That's right, this is your Power RX. And I couldn't be more excited today to bring you Dr. Valter Longo. He has written the Longevity Diet book, and he's seen as one of the premier experts on longevity and aging, and who of us want to age. Professor Longo is an internationally recognized as a leader in the field of aging studies and related diseases. His discoveries include some of the major genetic pathways that regulate aging and life-threatening diseases, and the identification of a genetic mutation that protects men from several different diseases. Professor Longo received the Nathan Schock Lecture Award from the National Institute of Aging in 2010, and in 2013, he received the Rising Star Award for Research on Aging and the 2016 Glenn Award for Research in the Biology of Aging. In 2015, after a number of his papers were among the most widely cited in the biomedical field, Time magazine called him a guru of longevity, and I have him here on the show. I couldn't be more thrilled. Welcome to the show, Dr. Longo.
Well, thanks for having me.
We're thrilled to have you here, and I know you're in Milan at the moment, so we're a little bit jealous. But we want to talk about aging. We want to talk about longevity. I see patients all the time that really want to optimize, to maximize their health, to live a fruitful and productive life into their later years, not to live in the state of sickness. What are some of the ideals and the pillars that you see, that are critical when we're having a conversation about aging and longevity?
Well, in the book, I talk about two major components, and one, of course, is the everyday diet, and there's a small component of exercise. And the second one is these periodic fasting-mimicking diets, and using the starvation essentially for just short periods, but the starvation done with food. So this is where fasting-mimicking diets come from. To get rid of damaged components of cells and organs, and then replace them with healthier ones. At least this has been demonstrated in mice and in initial clinical trials, and now we're doing many different clinical trials to confirm these initial results.
Fantastic. So let's break it down a little bit for the audience. So what is the everyday longevity diet before we get to fasting and all of that stuff? What do you think the ideal everyday diet should be for somebody truly interested in longevity and anti-aging?
Yes. And so I think more than what I think, in the book, I talk about 5 pillars, and now there's got to be a methodology to identify what kind of nutrition is important for people, and this is also trying to address the confusion that we have out there. So many different diets, and so in the 5 pillars have to do with the epidemiological studies, clinical studies, basic research, and studies of centenarians, and then finally studies of complex systems. And the idea is to take all of these different disciplines of medicine and science and put them together, and try to come up with common denominators that are effective and protective. And so if you do that, the everyday diet turns out to be a pescatarian diet, so a low protein but sufficient protein, vegan plus fish diet that is lasts 12 hours a day. So let's say 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. People shouldn't eat for much longer than that. And then in the book, I also talk about the importance to go from what we hear all the time, which is 5 meals a day, or even more, to 2 meals a day. If you're gaining weight, or you tend to gain weight, or are overweight.
Interesting. So let's talk about low protein, sufficient protein. Can you quantify it? I know some people like numbers. They want to know number of grams per day. What do you define as low or sufficient protein? Roughly, where is that in the number range for an average woman or average man?
Yes, roughly is 0.35 grams per pound of body weight.
So 0.35 grams.
Yeah, so somebody who weighs 120 pounds, you're looking at something like 40 grams a day of protein. Yeah.
Interesting. So, I had somebody on the show recently who who had the opposite theory, right? They believe that a lot of the weight gain and the obesity that we're seeing today is because on protein, and therefore we're losing skeletal muscle mass and then having more blood sugar instability. What would you say to that theory when we're talking just about protein? I just think there's so much confusion, so I don't want to leave this quite yet. What would you say to that?
I would say that if you look at all the clinical studies, if you look at epidemiological studies, if you look at the basic research, our own study a few years ago using the CDC showing that the people that had the lowest protein intake, they had the lowest overall mortality, and they had the lowest cancer mortality risk. I mean, it just many different studies. Now,
Right.
what we also found in that study is that the people over 65, that was no longer true, meaning that people reporting having a low protein diet that were 70, 75-year-olds, they did worse, right? So, yeah, so that is clearly an age-dependent, a big change around 65 or 70. So the frailty issue may in fact happen, but it happens in very old people, and it does not happen in younger people. Now, even if you look at animals, there's a study by Simpson in Australia that was done, and they fed animals all kinds of different combination of protein, of macronutrients, and in fact, the longest lifespan the mice reach is by a low protein, relatively normal fat and high carbohydrate diet. That is the one that people, the mice benefit most from. And same thing from the Harvard, independent of our studies, the Harvard, large 100,000 people epidemiological studies. If you look at the low carb people, if they had a high protein, high animal fat diet, they did the worst for every single cause of mortality and overall mortality, right? I mean, I just could go on for about an hour on this.
Right,
just,
right. All this
people
stuff.
that say that usually have very little evidence for it. I mean, there are some studies that show protein benefit, but if you look at the clinical studies on protein and muscle, they show about 30 grams of protein optimized muscle synthesis in any given training. So you do not need, even if you did that twice a day, that would be 60 grams of protein.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. And then being a vegan, talk to us about a healthy vegan for longevity versus one that's unhealthy. Is it mainly sticking to plant-based foods? Where does grain come into the picture? Where does fat come into the picture when we're thinking about longevity? There's such a push right now, as I'm sure you know, towards keto and paleo and all these other things. So I think everyone gets super confused, when you're looking at these markers, like you're saying, and you're looking at it purely from a mortality risk standpoint. What do you think about fat and grain, and where does that fit into being sort of this healthy vegan that eats fish as well?
Yeah, well, we don't look at it just from the mortality. We also look at from the health, so we're looking at health span, right? So how long can you live healthy? And that's what we're really focusing on. And so, all these fashionable things like keto diet, again, if you look at the pillars, for example, the last one we always look at is centenarians and record longevity groups like Okinawa, Loma Linda, California, Sardinia, Italy, Calabria, Italy, Greece, Costa Rica. So if you look around and you look for example, high protein, not a single one of them, right? If you look at ketogenic diet, not a single one of these groups have a high fat diet. The Greeks and the Italians may have a moderate fat intake, let's say about 30%, maybe 35. Let's say the most you're going to get probably about 40% of the calories coming from fat. But the Okinawans, for example, that for the longest time had record longevity, I just presented with Dr. Suzuki just a couple of days ago here in Italy. and
Mm-hmm.
they have an extremely low fat diet, right? So it's really fundamental to not have a one pillar strategy. To say, for example, if you go on a ketogenic diet, a high protein ketogenic diet, which is probably the worst of all, you're going to lose weight. There is no doubt about it. You may even see some benefits on cholesterol. You might see some benefits on blood pressure, etc. Maybe glucose. But you're taking a big risk, and you might not see the damage from that until 5, 10, 20 years down the road. And then that's why it's so important to have the longevity pillar. So to say, let me look, not only at what's beneficial for a couple months, but what's going to get you to 100 healthy, right? And that's a very different field, the acute versus the chronic to 100 years of age.
Hi, it's Dr. Taz here, and if you've been listening to the show, you must know that I love tea. I walk around with it, I drink it all day long, so I couldn't be more excited to bring you Teamy Blends. Teamy Tea is an honest company that provides the best quality loose leaf tea to all of us, providing us the results we want. Here's what I've been doing. I've been using the Teamy Skinny and the Teamy Colon on their 30-day detox program and seeing some really amazing results. I'm seeing everything from my metabolism a little bit better, burning that pesky stored fat, really suppressing those afternoon and evening appetites and cravings that you can have at the end of a workday. My energy's through the roof and my bloating is gone. I feel amazing and I want this for you too. Check out Teamy Tea and check out this 30-day detox. You can order your 30-day detox today and save 15% on your entire order at teamyblends.com. That's TEAMI blends.com using the code WHOLEHEALTH at checkout.
More with my guest coming up, but right now I want to tell you about Grove Collaborative, products for a beautiful and healthy home. You guys have heard me talk about your toxic load and how important it is to pay attention to what we're using on our bodies and in our home. It directly impacts our health. Grove Collaborative makes it easy to discover amazing natural home and personal care products. Grove selects only the best non-toxic products so you can shop with confidence, knowing that everything on their site is good for you, your family, and the planet. I want you to try Grove Collaborative, so right now, when you spend $20 or more on your first order, you'll get a free $30 Mrs. Meyer's kit, plus a bonus gift, plus a free 2-month VIP trial membership. The bonus gift is a tea towel. Go to grove.co/wholehealth to claim your special offer. That's grove.co, not grove.com, grove.co/wholehealth to get the special offer.
Interesting. And you mentioned this as we were discussing this, is eating 2 meals a day versus 5 meals a day. Are there certain people that should be doing that? Is weight the indicator, visceral fat, the indicator of when to drop your number of meals down? Is that just something everybody should be doing after, 40 or after 50? Give us a little bit more there. Super curious to see what you have to say about that.
Yeah, so I think that in that case, if you look at the United States, over 70% of people are overweight and obese,
Yes.
and this is not just the United States. I mean, lots of Europe and many other countries are in the same situation or similar. And so, that tells you about 7 out of 10 people, of course, need to do it. And even lots of other people that are in the normal weight range, they might have lots of abdominal fat. So they may have to do it as well. So that 70% is probably more like 80% in the United States. And now, it should be 2 meals plus a snack, meaning that it's good to keep the third meal present and always have breakfast. Why? Lots of epidemiological studies now are showing that if you skip breakfast, you don't do very well. Not clear what the reason for that is, but let's say to be safe, it's good to probably just keep the breakfast and then have either lunch or dinner, but then have the third meal as a maybe 100 calorie, 200 calorie healthy snack, or it could be a salad or something like that. It's probably good, not a bad idea to keep the third meal, or at least to have that snack as the third meal. We should do it. Yeah, of course, the people that are overweight or they may have excess abdominal adiposity, abdominal fat. everybody else, I don't think they need to do it. I think they can have 3 meals plus a snack a day, and that's perfectly fine. And for example, after age 65, on average, human beings they start losing weight, and and we now know that that a little bit of extra weight, being like borderline 25, 26 body mass index, seems to be protective. So if somebody is at that borderline and they lose weight there slowly, I would say, keep a good diet. You may have to eat a little bit more and avoid excessive weight loss, instead of worrying. I mean, I always have these 70-year-olds that say, oh, I'm a couple of pounds overweight, I should lose weight. And in most cases, they probably don't need to lose weight. So understanding that people like simple ideas, but unfortunately, there is some complexity, and it's not that hard. You just have to know what age phase you're in, and then hopefully the doctor or a dietitian can help you,
with that.
Can guide you through the general guidelines for that.
Oh my gosh, I have a million questions. So real quickly though, I want to repeat that BMI you're saying of 25 to 26 is okay for somebody at what age and above? It's actually protective.
Yeah, so I would say
for
somebody 70 and above and you're 25, 26 range, it's probably not a bad range. You're going to lose weight most likely progressively.
Okay.
And so now you have a couple of extra pounds, and that might not be a bad idea to try to stay as much as maybe lose very, very little if possible. And that's been shown to actually decrease mortality and not increase mortality.
And then what about someone like 35 to 60? Where do they need to be hanging out?
Well, they need to be hanging out. The BMI, the ideal one for men is about around 23, and for women is around 21 or so. Those are the ideal body mass index. That's where you see the lowest mortality from all causes.
Got you.
And then of course people need to adjust based on what they can achieve, and of course not if most people are not going to be able to get there, but that certainly seems to be the ideal weight.
And then for those listening today who are under 35, where would you tell them to aim? Is it the same 23, 21 male, female, or something different?
Well, I think that, again, there's going to be all kinds of factors. I mean, you have certainly lots of women that are, BMI 19 and they're perfectly healthy.
Right.
So, I wouldn't necessarily tell somebody that they have to, now if they're BMI 19, they have to go to 21. So especially somebody under the age of 35, I think it'd be good to talk to a doctor or a dietitian and figure it out. Are you underweight? Is that lean body mass sufficient? Are there any reason to gain weight, to go to 21? Or if you're a male and your BMI 22.5, again, is there some undernourishment issues? The lean body mass is sufficient, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say, in general, it's good to be between, let's say, 18 and 25, as most medical guidelines tell you. But if you look at, how to make it to age 100 healthy, those are the general rules. Up to age 65 seems to be good to be for a male around 23 and for a woman around 21. And after that, even a little bit higher.
Oh my goodness, this is such great information. Now, I don't want to lose you without talking about what is the rage now, intermittent fasting, the fasting-mimicking diet, periodic fasting. Break it down for us. Tell us what each is and what we need to be thinking about.
Yeah, so now we hear a lot about this intermittent fasting, and intermittent fasting is basically trying to include almost everything that has the word fasting in it. But in fact, there are different things. So one of them which is becoming very popular, is the 16-8. So people basically eat for 8 hours and then fast for 16 hours. Now, that's very good acutely, meaning that if you do that for a while, you're going to see benefits, but there are multiple problems associated with the 16 hours, which are not associated with the 12 hours, right? So I recommend in the book to go for 12 hours. So 12 hours, 8 a.m., 8 p.m., of eating, and or 7 to 7 or 9 to 9, doesn't matter, and then 12 hours of fasting. Now, when you get to 16 hours, you see the benefits. Of course, you might see benefits on weight, etc. But then, if you look at the epidemiological data, you start seeing problems. For example, one of the problems is gallstones. People that have consistently have long fasting periods tend to have a much higher formation of gallstones and a much higher need for gallbladder removal. Not a pleasant thing to need. To have done to you. And the other thing is, as I was mentioning earlier, skipping breakfast. Lots of people that do 16 hours, they skip breakfast. That's how they manage the 16 hours. And that's associated with increasing overall mortality, increasing cardiovascular mortality. So now, there's all kinds of possible reasons for why that is, but certainly you wouldn't want to start something that is already associated with problems and not benefits, right? And that's why I'm very very much in favor for the 12-hour time restricted feeding, but against the 16 hours, which is becoming very popular. And same thing, I'm against the alternate day fasting. So eat one day, fast for the other day. It's not feasible for the great majority of people. Eventually, you're going to drop it, but it's also likely that it's going to give you some of the same problems that we just mentioned for the 16 hours. Then there is the 5-2 diet, which is, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I do know the people that are doing the 16-8, they are skipping breakfast. What were some of the implications you had mentioned earlier about skipping breakfast and just keeping your 2 meals to lunch and dinner?
Yeah, that's what I just mentioned. Now there are multiple epidemiological studies showing that people that skip breakfast die earlier and develop more cardiovascular disease and probably also additional disease, right? So that alone is a reason. And this is not just one study. Again, it's been shown in multiple studies. And that to me is a sufficient reason to already say, not only you don't see benefits, you will expect people to do better, right, on this diet, not having breakfast. You see worse. When you see worse, you want to probably stay away from that 16 hours.
Gotcha.
But 12 hours, perfectly fine. I think lots of people in the United States particularly, but all over the world, they eat for 15, 16 hours a day. And that's when you start clearly seeing problems, So if you can go back to eating for 12 hours, then that really is supported by all the pillars. The safety concerns are really zero. So, there is absolutely no reason to not do that.
And is that what a fasting mimicking diet is, the 12-hour rule, or is that something different?
No. The fasting mimicking diet is actually lasting between 4 and 7 days. This is something that we developed at USC to basically allow people. We started with a water-only long fast for like 4 days with cancer patients, 10 years ago or longer, and right away it was clear that people did not want to fast water-only fast, and oncologists did not want their patients to do water-only fasting. That's when, with some of the help of the National Cancer Institute, we developed a fasting mimicking diet, and for cancer patients originally, and then we moved to all kinds of different people. So now there's something called Prolon that is being tested clinically, and what the fasting mimicking diet is a low protein, low sugar, high good fat diet. The last 5 days, it completely replaces the everyday diet for just 5 days, and and it was developed to match the effects of water-only fasting on 4 markers: IGF-1, IGF-PP1, ketone bodies, and glucose. Right. So that's what a fasting-mimicking diet is.
Interesting. Oh my goodness, so much great information. All right. Well, if you want to learn more about longevity and anti-aging strategies and where food fits into this whole conversation of health and wellness, definitely connect with Dr. Longo. Dr. Longo, what's the best way for the audience to connect with you?
Yes, they can follow my Professor Valter Longo Facebook page at Prof. Valter Longo, PROF Valter Longo. Facebook, and that's probably the best way. We also have a foundation called the Create Cures Foundation, createcures.org, and I just wanted to mention I didn't mention the effects of the fasting mimicking diet. So this was clinically tested and shown last year in a 100-patient randomized trial to lower risk factors for diabetes, cancer, cardiovascular disease, and also markers for aging. So now we very much recommend this FMD to all people that have, let's say, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, etc.
Fantastic. Well, I know I've learned a lot on this episode today. I hope everybody else has as well. And remember, use this information to write your own personal prescription for power. This is Power RX with the guru of longevity. Thank you so much for joining me from Milan today, Dr. Longo. And I know my audience has benefited from today as well. Thanks so much.